This is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Sally Burdett. Our top stories this hour. South Korean investigators asked the acting president to clear the way for Yoon Suk-yeol's arrest after a failed attempt ended in a 6-hour standoff. As attacks on the Gaza Strip escalate, a U.S. official says Washington plans an $8 billion arms sale to Israel. Donald Trump is due to be sentenced in his hush money case just 10 days before his inauguration as U.S. president. And moon shoots. Scientists in Hungary successfully grow plants in soil simulating lunar conditions. Investigators in South Korea have asked the acting president to clear the way for impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol to be arrested. The security service and military troops stopped prosecutors from detaining Yoon in a 6-hour standoff inside his compound on Friday. Acting President Choi Sang-mok has now been told to order them to cooperate with the arrest warrant issued after Yoon's brief declaration of martial law last month. Our correspondent Shane Ham reports.
Just a short distance from the presidential compound here, thousands of people have gathered to show their support for South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol. Many have been here throughout the night, not just to show their support, but also to possibly await the arrival of investigators who tried unsuccessfully on Friday to execute a warrant to detain the president. Now, many believe investigators will try again sometime over this weekend, and that's why supporters here say they'll do whatever they can to prevent that from happening.
I believe we have every right to resist an illegal arrest warrant. This is what due process is all about, isn't it? Since it doesn't follow lawful procedures, we're fully justified in resisting.
I've come out to restore South Korea's liberal democracy. Isn't this absurd? How can they accuse a president of rebellion, detain them, and then later say they will withdraw the charge? Does that even make sense?
Now, investigators have until Monday before the court-issued warrant expires. If they fail to execute that warrant, they could request an extension or even bypass detention and request a formal arrest warrant. Either way, supporters here believe the warrant itself against the sitting president is illegal, as emotions run high in their support for Yoon Suk-yeol, who technically is still the current sitting president until the Constitutional Court rules on whether he will stay in power or he will be relieved of his duties. Shane Ham, CGTN, Seoul.
Palestinian officials say at least 59 people have been killed in Gaza since dawn on Saturday. Israel has been escalating its bombardment of the Gaza Strip over the past 2 days. The increased strikes come as ceasefire talks resumed in Doha on Friday. Senior Hamas officials have said the militant group wants to reach a deal as soon as possible. Our correspondent Rami Al-Magari is in Khan Yunis in Gaza.
So the latest from the ground here in the Gaza Strip is the Israeli action, Israeli airstrike on a number of people who are believed to be guarding the aid shipments from the aid truckloads that come in the Gaza Strip, enter the Gaza Strip, believed to be part of the Hamas task force. They were killed, along with others were killed earlier in the day. So the total is about 8 people from that group were killed by separate Israeli airstrikes in central Gaza Strip and south of the Gaza Strip. This comes also and against the backdrop of more Israeli strikes that occurred in different parts of the Gaza Strip, including a major strike in the Shija'iyya neighborhood in Gaza City, where 11 people were killed, including 7 children were killed in a strike on a home on one same family in Shija'iyya neighborhood. Another strike hit the Nusayrat refugee camp, in which a journalist and her mother were killed in a strike on a home in the central Gaza Strip Nusayrat refugee camp. The other neighborhoods in Gaza City, by the way, were hit by the Israeli airstrike. strikes, including the killing of one person in the Shad refugee camp, 2 persons in the Sabra neighborhood. The neighborhood of Tal al-Hawa came under bombardment, heavy bombardment earlier today. The northern Jabalia refugee camp also has been reportedly come under heavy bombardments and some kind of detonation of buildings over there in Jabalia. This comes also against the backdrop of some international reports, mainly the OCHA, United Nations Office for the Humanitarian Actions in the Gaza and the territories, suggesting that 10 attempts of the OCHA of the United Nations to enter the Ghouts have been failed by the Israeli actions and the restrictions. Only 2 attempts succeeded so far. We'd like here to refer to a UNICEF report that is suggesting that 95% of the population in Gaza can't have access to good food and nutrition in the territory because of the restrictions on the assistance truckload, because of the limited truckloads of goods and commodities entering the Gaza Strip, and the prices are still high and unaffordable by the population here.
Let's get the latest from Israel. Our correspondent Jonathan Regeb is in Tel Aviv.
First, one major operation against what is known in Israel, possibly in Gaza as well, as the officers' neighborhood. It's quite a high-rise buildings which are located in Bet Hanun, right in front of the Israeli city of Sderot. And these are buildings which are very uncharacteristic to the other structures in the area. High-rise buildings which, at least on the ground officially, were meant for residential purposes of Hamas officers, but according to the Israeli army, this was not a residential area, but rather a military compound with bunkers, with tunnels, with a lot of ammunition, and it was the buildings were high, very uncharacteristic to Gaza, especially to this area of Gaza where most of the structures are much lower. Therefore, what Israel claims is that this area was used as a military compound, which is high, overlooking the entire area. And now, according to the Israeli army, this neighborhood, this officers' neighborhood was dismantled completely.
And also we're hearing that the United States is planning this $8 billion arms sale to Israel. Do you have any more information on that? $8
billion US dollars. This is the deal. There's no confirmation from the Israeli side. It's the Jewish Sabbath now, so usually, unless it's something of an emergency, then there's no direct comment from Israel. We might hear a comment later in the day when the Jewish Sabbath is over, but we have heard from sources in the United States that this is about to happen. One of the last actions of Joe Biden as U.S. president, a very big arms sale to Israel, and I think this puts aside a lot of the comments made indirectly, not directly, but indirectly by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the people that surround him. Many times over the past week, over the past year, mainly over the past few months, they have spoken of a quiet arms embargo from the United States, meaning that Israel has asked for certain elements from the U.S. which were not authorized by the U.S. to export to Israel. This perhaps puts it all aside. $8 billion, that is a lot of ammunition. Some of it will be provided quite soon. Other elements, of course, will first have to be manufactured and then provided through the years. But of course, such a big package shows that the Biden administration, in one of its last moves, is very committed to the security of Israel. These are moves that President Biden perhaps was a bit cautious to make before the elections due to criticism on his policy coming from the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Now, when there are no electoral thoughts to make, then these things are happening. I think President Joe Biden once again is making it quite clear that at least he, maybe not the whole Democratic Party, but at least him, the president, is very committed to the security of Israel, and that is why he's approving this very big arms deal, which is about to go ahead in the coming days.
A British man has been named as one of 14 people killed in the New Orleans terror attack on New Year's Day. Edward Pettifer died when a man drove a truck into crowds in the early hours. The suspect is Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. Army veteran who's believed to have acted alone. He was shot dead by police who found an Islamic State flag inside his vehicle. A memorial has been set up on New Orleans' famous Bourbon Street to honor the victims. Our correspondent Alistair Baverstock reports.
In the heart of the French Quarter, members of the New Orleans Police Department gathered for prayers Thursday night in the wake of the New Year's Day tragedy. Afterwards, the officers returned to their beats, and less than 48 hours on from the deadly attack, it was back to business as usual on Bourbon Street. The popular tourist address reopened to the public. Friday morning, the atmosphere nevertheless remained subdued.
Normally the energy here is so enthusiastic, and you can just tell how the New Orleans people really took it to heart. So I think people are like, no, we're going to go back there and get back on that bicycle, and we're going to keep rolling. We're not going to let it put us down.
A memorial to the victims has been erected on Bourbon Street, drawing locals and tourists alike to leave flowers and messages of support on the wall.
I went and gave blood yesterday to help the survivors, and you never think this can happen in your city, and a city that's just full of joy and happiness, and so sad for the families.
Questions have been raised about how the city could have better prepared for such an attack, or even prevented it entirely.
One security issue, these movable bollards on Bourbon Street. They were designed to slide along these rails to block traffic during big pedestrian events. But not long after being installed back in 2017, they became jammed with Mardi Gras beads and other refuse and stopped working. Many, like this one, were removed entirely. If working, they could have helped stop Wednesday's attack.
Many visitors, however, say the tragedy won't stop them from returning to this much-beloved city.
My response to this is I will come back to New Orleans. This is my third time here. I love this city. I love the culture, the art, the history, the architecture, everything about it. And I don't want people to be afraid to come here because I've never felt unsafe. And terror attacks can happen anywhere, as we know, any city.
Nevertheless, security concerns are top of mind for local leaders who are promising to ramp up safety measures ahead of the city's next major commitment, hosting American football's championship Super Bowl game on February 9th. Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, New Orleans.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, a judge rules Donald Trump will be sentenced in his hush money case just 10 days before his inauguration as US president.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
You might think you are better informed in an information age. The fact is, people are more often misled by misinformation. You might think every voice is heard in a digital world. The fact is, many nations and peoples are still underrepresented. And data poverty shuts out many. We at CGTN are committed to transcending the information gap and the digital divide. CGTN, bridging nations and civilizations. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. South Korean investigators asked the acting president to clear the way for Yoon Suk-yeol's arrest after a failed attempt ended in a 6-hour standoff. As attacks on the Gaza Strip escalate, a U.S. official says Washington plans an $8 billion arms sale to Israel. A judge has ruled that Donald Trump will be sentenced in his hush money case on Friday, 10 days before his inauguration as U.S. president. He had tried to use his election victory to have his conviction dismissed. The judge signaled Trump is unlikely to face jail time or financial penalties. He can appear in court either virtually or in person. Trump was found guilty of falsifying business records to cover up a payment to an adult movie star. David Dunn is a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. He says although a jail sentence is unlikely, the case still matters to Donald Trump.
He has been consistently calling for these charges to be thrown out. In fact, one of the reasons why this hearing has been scheduled at this date is that he complained that that would hang over him over the next 4 years and interrupt his concentration as president. So the judge said, fine, we'll do it now then. And it matters also to the judge. The judge is very keen to show that the rule of law in America still applies, that actually he has been found guilty of 34 felonies, and therefore the will of the jury, which was unanimous, should be seen to prevail, and the justice prevail, and that he is found guilty and given a sentence, a token sentence, for the crimes that he has been found guilty of. So Trump is furious. The judge is keen to hold the rule of law. It will be interesting to see whether actually Trump is able to actually postpone this hearing or whether he will appeal the sentence. But there is an attempt to have a legal reckoning in this interregnum between the election and him being sworn in as president on the 20th.
In other developments in the run-up to the inauguration on the 20th, on Friday, Mike Johnson re-elected House Speaker. However, there is concern among some Republican representatives that he might not be able to further Trump's agenda. Could you explain why this role of Speaker is so crucial for Trump's agenda?
Well, the Speaker of the House really does manage the whole legislative programme of a new administration and is responsible for getting it through Congress. And what we have is the new Congress, when it's sworn in January, has an even thinner majority than the one that's in there just now. And there are many people in that Republican majority are unhappy with aspects of the agenda that Trump is putting forward. Trump wants to extend the tax cuts that he put forward last time he was in office, which will cost $4 trillion and favour mostly the rich. What that is likely to do is increase America's deficit, and there are many fiscally conservative Americans are very concerned about that. Add to that there are many aspects of the agenda that are very radical. The very radical deportation plans, the trade policy that are very confrontational. Plans to cut the federal budget, which will mean cutting into programs that are dearly popular among many of the American people, which could have electoral effects for members of Congress. So it's by far from clear whether this very radical agenda across a whole variety of issues will get the support even within the Republican Party to get the majority needed to actually get them through Congress. And the Speaker's role is crucial in this, and many regard him as ineffectual, regard him as captured by Trump, and they are not entirely happy with him or supportive of his leadership. So what we're likely to see, despite the fact that Trump has the White House and both houses of Congress and a quiescent Supreme Court, we're likely to see a very fractious set of politics in the next 4 years, or let's say in the next 2 years, as Trump tries to push through what are controversial and radical policies.
Look at other news now. At least 13 people have been killed and dozens more injured after a bus crash in Colombia. The vehicle was driving on a mountainous road near the border with Ecuador when it plummeted into a 150-meter deep ravine. It was transporting tourists who were visiting the sanctuary of Las Lajas, a pilgrimage site in the Guaitara River Canyon. The cause of the crash remains under investigation. 8 people have died after a fire broke out at a vegetable market in northern China's Hebei province. More than a dozen people are in hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The fire started just before 9 a.m. local time in Zhangjiakou city and was put out around an hour later. Authorities are investigating the cause. Venezuela's opposition presidential candidate is making a defiant return to South America after living in exile in Spain. Edmundo Gonzalez is visiting Argentina, Uruguay and Panama to seek regional support. He fled his home country in September after claiming to have won a disputed election. Venezuela has issued a warrant for his arrest. On Friday, Nicolas Maduro will be sworn in as president of Venezuela for a third time. Myanmar's military rulers have announced they will release almost 6,000 prisoners, including 180 foreigners, under an amnesty to mark the country's Independence Day. The military said it had ordered their release on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. Myanmar will also commute the life sentences of 144 prisoners to 15 years in jail. Now, would you trust a surgeon to operate on your body when they're not even in the same city as you? Well, Chinese doctors have carried out a series of remote surgeries that push the limits of technology. They hope their findings will help patients in areas that are difficult to reach. Our correspondent Michael Marilia has more.
It's remote working on a whole new level. Doctors at the People's Liberation Army Hospital conducted 5 operations in total. The patients were in Beijing, but the surgeons were thousands of kilometers away in 3 different cities. They used a robotic system to perform procedures involving the liver, pancreas and gallbladder. That system relied on a high-speed satellite. The surgeon's movements would be translated into data, which would be sent up to the satellite, then down to the robotic system working on the patient. Feedback data would then be sent in the opposite direction. All in all, the data would travel nearly 150,000 kilometers. And yet the surgeons could do their jobs as if they were in the same room as their patients. The technology could connect patients with surgeons in ways we've never seen before. For example, it's possible that doctors could treat injured soldiers without going anywhere near the front line. But it's important to remember, patients can't undergo these operations just anywhere. They would still need to be in a facility with sophisticated infrastructure. There may be some way to go, but these operations suggest that one day a satellite surgeon could save someone's life. Michael Marilia, CGTN.
A groundbreaking experiment in Hungary is aiming to bring us one step closer to recreating human life in space. Scientists have managed to grow mustard plants in soil that mimics conditions found on the moon. Our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez reports.
In this modest lab north of Budapest, scientists are working on a project that is out of this world. They have achieved what many once thought was impossible, growing plants in an environment that mimics the moon's barren surface.
The lunar soil is not having any kind of organic compound, so there is absolutely nothing to feed the plant.
Scientists have been growing these mustard seed plants for about 6 weeks now in a controlled environment. They are using 2 types of lunar soil, one from the highland region and another one from the lunar mare or sea, to determine which one is the best for cultivation. The next step in this experiment will be to determine whether these plants are safe to eat. For now, the team is focusing on perfecting their sustainable growing method. While other countries have experimented with growing plants in lunar soil simulants, Hungary's unique approach prioritizes sustainability over mass production.
For example, other countries are planting 10,000 different seeds in 10,000 different soil samples. It's a kind of trial and error, and let's see what's working, what's not working. Maybe something is growing, but making it a sustainable way is a different story.
Researchers are also experimenting with introducing bioengineered bacteria and adding tailored nutrients to the lunar soil to create a growing medium that could support crops like lettuce, beans, and even small fruit-bearing plants.
So I think this is the way how can we start the agriculture on the moon. It's similar totally what we did thousands of years ago in Mesopotamia.
The team is also working to address one of the biggest challenges: water. Transporting water from Earth to the moon is costly, so scientists are exploring ways to extract it from lunar materials or recycle it efficiently.
We are investigating the way how to generate electricity. Electricity and energy is everything. If you are having energy, you can use this kind of energy to generate water from different kind of minerals, like copper sulfate. If you are heating it, you can generate water.
The team is now waiting for test results to determine if the plants are safe for human consumption. If successful, it could be a pivotal moment for the success of future long-term lunar missions. Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN, Gödöllő, Hungary.
The final preparations are underway for China's famous Ice and Snow World, which is opening its doors on Sunday. The international festival, held in Harbin, is set to be the largest in history, featuring a record 300,000 cubic meters of ice and snow. Visitors will be able to enjoy ice castles, snow sculptures and slides. And that's the world today. Thanks so much for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel, on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. Got more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's The Agenda with Juliet Mann. For now, from all of us here in London, goodbye.